a distinguished figure in African politics for his resilience, for his tenacity, for his compassion, for his competence, for his character. I urge you to join me in welcoming President John Mahama to be the keynote today. Thank you.
Hello? Thank you very much. Please resume your seats. Thank you. The chairperson, President of the Nigerian Bar Association, the Honorable Attorney General, members of the Nigerian Bar here present, and because of the huge galaxy of distinguished citizens here, let me say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me clear a few things first. One, about my Nigerian antecedents. My stepmother is Nigerian, who raised me. She comes from Kwara State. And so, what Karibi was explaining was that at a point in time when there had been a coup in Ghana, my father lived in exile here in Nigeria, and I had to come and stay with my stepmother for many years in Offa. So I know Offa quite well. And I consider that my hometown here in Nigeria. And the Olofa of Offa was very gracious to grant me a chieftaincy title. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm the Ari Atolashi of Offa Kingdom. And he told a story about our intervention in Gambia when there had been an election, and we had a few issues getting the then head of state here to accept the results of the election. There was a funny incident. We had gone to intervene with Sterling Johnson, Macky Sall, President Jonathan was part of it at the time, and Ibn Chambers. And we met the president, and we met the opposition leader who had won the election, and he talked about how he had been placed under house arrest. And so when we met the president, we tried to convince him to release him from house arrest. And he says, I know the international community. If anything touches the skin of this man, you say I murdered him. And so I'm protecting him for his own safety. And I said, but Mr. President, I thought that if you wanted to protect him, any danger to him will come from outside his house, not from inside. He says, yes, why? I said, but the guns that are protecting him are pointing at the house instead of away from the house. And happily, eventually, we got democracy reinstated in the Gambia. Let me warn you too, there's no quotation from Christopher Sapara Williams in this speech. I heard so many quotes from him. He must have been such a great legal luminary. It is with profound gratitude and a deep sense of responsibility that I stand before you today as a special guest at this annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. Your invitation to address this distinguished gathering is not just an honor for me, but a recognition of the crucial role the legal profession plays in shaping the future of our beloved continent. Your invitation is also historic. In my nearly 30 years of public service, this is the first time I've been invited to a bar conference. I was genuinely surprised when I received your invitation. Thank you, Nigerian Bar Association. I was genuinely surprised when I received your invitation, as I had always believed that bar conferences were exclusive events for only members of the legal profession. I thoroughly enjoyed the opening ceremony yesterday, and your keynote speaker, Dr. Ngozi Okondo-Iweala, a distinguished daughter of Africa, truly did justice to the conference team. I've been asked to speak for a few minutes on the topic, the future of Africa in the midst of rising security, economic, and political challenges. And as a student of history, I like to begin my lecture with some historical context. Following the Second World War, a combination of factors sparked the struggle for independence in Africa. Soldiers returning from war that had little to do with them, and African students who had become radicalized by the ideas of Pan-Africanism and the American Civil Rights Movement became catalysts for the independent movements, particularly in my country, Ghana. By 1957, Ghana emerged as the first country south of the Sahara to gain independence, and thereby paving the way for several other African countries, including Nigeria, to follow suit. Emerging from colonial rule was an exhilarating experience, and it was a hopeful time for Africans who looked forward to a future of building great nations that would ensure dignity and prosperity for all their people. That dream was short-lived. By the late 60s into the 70s, most African governments had fallen under military autocratic rule. Human rights were routinely violated, and free expression and an independent media were aspirations that seemed reserved for future democracies. This period in African history, which I refer to as the lost decades, was marked by stagnating economies and oppressive military regimes. The few attempts to widely believe that democracy will not only protect the rights and freedoms of the people, but it would also unleash their creative potential to build prosperous lives. Once again, there was hope. At one point, 6 of the world's fastest growing economies were in Africa, reigniting our belief in a prosperous future for the continent. Fast forward more than 2 decades, and Africa finds itself at a critical juncture. The neo-colonial stranglehold continues to choke the continent, while democratic governance has undoubtedly led to some commendable progress in infrastructure and the emergence of an affluent middle class. Africa remains largely an exporter of raw materials and a consumer of finished goods. Per capita incomes remain low compared to many countries with which Africa was on a par at the time of independence. Time is running out to make the crucial decisions that will once again inspire hope in the future of our democratic governance. Let me share a few examples from my own country, Ghana. According to the latest Afrobarometer survey, an overwhelming 87% of Ghanaians believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. Additionally, 85% of Ghanaians rate the country's economy as bad, while 72% describe their personal living conditions from fairly bad to bad. Now, this is where it gets interesting. About 55% of Ghanaians say they have lost trust in our parliament. 53% have lost trust in the presidency. Moreover, 73% believe that government is not doing enough to fight corruption. And 64% feel that government is failing to improve the economy. Another revealing statistic is that 22% of Ghanaians agree that the country will be better off under military rule. These figures indicate a significant decline in trust in democratic governance in Ghana, which should serve as a wake-up call for all of us. While I'm not certain of the most recent statistics for Nigeria, given that our two countries are often called Siamese twins from the same mother, and we're always competing over football and jollof, our countries are so similar that I believe that the sentiments expressed in Ghana might be very similar to the sentiments that you have here. The African continent today is grappling with a range of complex issues that threaten to derail our progress. Recent geopolitical tensions have led to a cascade of economic challenges, including rising food and energy prices. At the same time, the looming threat of climate change casts a shadow over agricultural productivity and energy security. These challenges are further exacerbated by ongoing political instability as seen in the recent coup d'etats in Burkina Faso, Guinea, Niger, and Mali. And these are clear reminders of the fragility of democratic governance in parts of our country. Our young people who are emerging from school are better educated than ever, and they have access to more information thanks to the digital age. However, many millennials, Gen Zs, and these other new generations feel that African democracies are not working for them. It is crucial that we as leaders understand that these challenges are not isolated. They are symptoms of deeper systematic issues rooted in the power dynamics of the contemporary international system. The current global order dominated by Western democracies has created a paradigm of intense competition among key state actors, often perpetuating external dependencies and manipulations that disproportionately impact our continent. The paradox of our time is that some of the largest holders of natural and human resources, including many African countries like yours and mine, find themselves vulnerable and dependent in the era of globalization. The accompanying strictures and institutions of these power dynamics ensure that decision-making processes, even within organizations like the United Nations, are dominated by a select few, often to the detriment of the global South. Recent developments on the international stage underscore the instability and insecurity pervading the global system. These events point to institutional failures and the inability of powerful interests to act decisively when it matters most. The ripple effects of these global crises are felt acutely in Africa, intensifying existing challenges and giving rise to new ones. The recent wave of political insurrections and coups in Africa, particularly in the Sahel region, reflect deep-seated issues of injustice, alienation, and marginalization. The state fragility and insecurity that have led to military takeovers have not only disrupted mutual understanding within the ECOWAS sub-region, but also exposed the limitation of current diplomatic and interventionist strategies. Distinguished members of the bar, we must ask ourselves, what is the future of Africa? What are the challenges that threaten Africa's future? And what role do you as legal professionals have in securing this future? To answer these questions, we must first examine the structural challenges that undermine our African economies. Challenges that have been starkly highlighted by recent global events. These events have not only disrupted our economies, but have also exposed the deep-rooted vulnerabilities that long existed beneath the surface of our economic frameworks. Our continent's heavy reliance on exporting commodities and importing essential goods has made us especially vulnerable to the unpredictable fluctuation of global markets. This vulnerability is not a recent development. It has been a lingering legacy of colonial economic structures that we have yet to fully dismantle. The recent commodity price shocks have sent shockwaves through our economies, exposing how fragile our financial stability and economic sovereignty is. Firstly, the monoproduct nature of many African economies poses a significant barrier to sustainable growth. If we take Nigeria, for example, its heavy dependence on oil exports, which account for a major portion of its export earnings, is a vulnerability. This over-reliance on a single commodity leaves the economy highly susceptible to global oil price fluctuations, as we have seen all too clearly in recent years. Similar situations exist across the continent, whether it's cocoa in Côte d'Ivoire, whether it's gold in Ghana, copper in Zambia, or diamonds in Botswana. Again, despite its enormous potential, our agricultural sector remains largely underdeveloped and underutilized. We continue to import vast quantities of food that could be produced locally, which drains our foreign exchange reserves and stifles the growth of domestic agribusiness. Moreover, the legal frameworks governing land use, agricultural financing, food safety standards often lag behind global best practices, discouraging investment and innovation in this sector. Again, our manufacturing base is severely underdeveloped. The premature deindustrialization of Africa, driven by poorly designed structural adjustment programs and inequitable global trade practices, has resulted in our exclusion from global value chains. Our contribution to global manufacturing and value added remains below 2%, a statistic that does not reflect our potential and instead perpetuates our role as exporters of raw material. Fourthly, the informal sector, which accounts for a substantial portion of employment and economic activity in many African countries, operates largely outside the formal legal and regulatory frameworks. This not only restricts productivity and growth, but also deprives government of the much-needed tax revenue and also workers of essential legal protection. It goes without saying that our financial systems remain undeveloped and are often inaccessible to large segments of our population. The lack of robust credit reporting systems, limited access to long-term capital, and high interest rates stifle entrepreneurship and hinder economic diversification. As legal professionals, you have a crucial role to play in addressing these structural challenges. Your task is not just to advocate for change, but to actively shape the legal frameworks that will support the diversification and strengthening of our economies. This requires a multifaceted approach. The recent breakthrough with the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area is not merely an economic agreement. It is the embodiment of the Pan-African vision championed by leaders like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. As Nkrumah once prophetically stated, Africa must unite now or perish. The African Continental Free Trade Area reflects this spirit, ushering in a new era of economic integration and opportunity that transcends the arbitrary borders imposed by colonial powers. It stands as a testament to our collective determination to carve our own path and shape our own economic destiny. However, we must acknowledge with a clear-eyed realism that this immense potential remains largely unrealized due to ongoing structural impediments, and I'm still referring to the African Continental Free Trade Area. The lingering effects of colonial exploitation, the burden of unsustainable debt, and the volatility of global commodity markets continue to challenge our progress. Yet it is precisely in facing these challenges that you as legal professionals must step forward. And yesterday, our sister Ngozi asked, are you ready? The legal framework of the African Continental Free Trade Area offers an unprecedented opportunity to reshape the economic landscape of our continent. As custodians of the law, you bear the responsibility of ensuring that this framework not only promotes trade, but also protects the rights of our workers and our citizens. You must diligently scrutinize and refine the protocols on trade in goods and services, ensuring that they align with international labor standards and human rights conventions. Furthermore, the protocol on the free movement of persons is not just an economic necessity, but a realization of the Pan-African dream. It is your duty as legal persons to advocate for and implement legal mechanisms that enable free movement of our people and goods across our borders, while addressing the legitimate security concerns associated with that. You must work tirelessly to harmonize our immigration laws. recognize professional qualifications across our member states, and establish robust systems for the mutual recognition of judgments and arbitral awards. For your profession, the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area opens up new opportunities and responsibilities. You must proactively adapt your legal education and practice to meet the needs of an integrated African market. This involves developing expertise in international trade law, cross-border disputes, and comparative African law. It also means establishing Pan-African law firms and legal networks that are capable of serving clients in various countries across the continent, and thereby fostering a truly African legal ecosystem. Moreover, you must lead in developing a body of African commercial law that reflects our values and our realities. And this includes drafting model laws for e-commerce, intellectual property protection, and competition. And all these must be tailored to our own African context. You should also advocate for the creation of an African commercial court to resolve disputes arising from the African Continental Free Trade Area and ensuring that African jurisprudence plays a central role in interpreting and applying agreements. As we navigate this new landscape, we must remain vigilant in addressing potential challenges. The benefits of economic integration should not be limited to large corporations or only the political elite. We must develop and enforce competition laws that prevent monopolistic practices and ensure that small and medium enterprises can also thrive in this expanded market. Additionally, environmental protection must be an integral part of our trade policies, ensuring that our pursuit of prosperity does not come at the expense of our natural heritage. In the spirit of Nkrumah's vision, let us view the African Continental Free Trade Area not as an end in itself, but as a stepping stone towards greater political and economic unity. As legal professionals, you must become the architects of this new Africa, crafting laws and institutions that bring our nations closer together. You should also work to revive and modernize the concept of African customary law, creating a distinct African legal identity that honors our diverse traditions while addressing the needs of a modern, integrated economy. The task before you is monumental, but so too is your capacity to meet it. Let us take inspiration from the words of another great Pan-Africanist, Julius Nyerere, who said, "Without unity, there is no future for Africa." As we move forward with the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, let us do so with an unwavering commitment to unity, justice, and prosperity for all Africans. Your legal expertise must serve as the foundation upon which the structure of African economic integration is built, ensuring that the dreams of our founding fathers are not just aspirations, but become the living reality of every African citizen. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change poses an existential threat to our agricultural sector and our energy security. As guardians of the law, you must take the lead in developing and implementing the legal instruments that are necessary to promote sustainable agricultural practice and incentivize investments in renewable energy. Your role goes beyond mere advocacy. You must draft legislation that balances economic development with environmental sustainability, ensuring that the Africa of tomorrow is not constructed at the expense of our natural heritage. The specter of political instability continues to cast a dark shadow over our continent. The recent wave of coup d'etats in West Africa is still a stark reminder of the fragility of our democracies. Even more concerning is the rise of people's coups, that is civil unrest, which reflect a deep disillusionment with the democratic process. As legal professionals, you have a solemn duty to strengthen the pillars of democracy, the rule of law, the separation of powers, and the protection of fundamental human rights. You must undertake a critical examination of our constitutional frameworks, our electoral processes, and accountability mechanisms. The Nigerian Bar Association must be at the forefront of advocating for reforms that enhance the credibility of our democratic institutions and restore trust in the social contract between the governed and their leaders. And yesterday, our sister spoke a lot about the social contract. Distinguished members of the Nigerian Bar, let us now turn our attention to a matter of paramount importance: the youth of Africa. This demographic represents both our greatest challenge and our most promising asset. A duality that requires our urgent attention and coordinated action. The alarming rates of youth unemployment across our continent are not just statistics to be discussed in academic discourse or political rhetoric. They are a ticking time bomb of social unrest and unfulfilled potential. As legal practitioners, you cannot afford to be passive observers of this unfolding crisis. It is your duty to champion policies and initiatives that create meaningful opportunities for our young people. Your role extends beyond the courtroom and the boardroom. You must become architects of a future that fully harnesses the boundless potential of our youth. First and foremost, you must advocate for educational reforms that are aligned with the needs of a 21st century economy. The current educational system, a remnant of our colonial past, is utterly inadequate for preparing our young people to face the challenges and seize the opportunities of the modern world. You must push for a comprehensive curriculum overhaul that emphasizes critical thinking, digital literacy, and practical, technical, and vocational skills. As legal professionals, you can contribute to this by offering internship and mentorship programs and practical legal education initiatives that bridge the gap between academic theory and professional practice. Additionally, you must work towards establishing a robust legal framework that fosters entrepreneurship amongst our youth. This involves advocating the legislation that simplifies business registration processes, provides tax incentives for young entrepreneurs, and improves access to credit and capital. In this context, I propose the creation of a youth entrepreneurship legal clinic. This initiative will offer free legal advice and support to young entrepreneurs, helping them to navigate the complex legal landscape of business formation and business operations. By lowering legal barriers to entry, we can unleash a set of innovation and job creation driven by our young people. Furthermore, we must ensure that our labor laws